Releasing in Australian cinemas in right now is a film called Head South, and it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the writer-director of Head South, Jonathan Ogilvie. Jonathan, welcome again to Movie Metropolis.
Delighted to be here, Peter.
Good to talk to you, and this is such an enjoyable film set in Christchurch, in New Zealand, in 1979, and about a young man's journey into his post-punk sort of music interest. What was the inspiration behind the film?
Well, it's very much autobiographical. It was my life, you know. As I often say, it's everything that happened to me. Um, it happened, and, and almost all of it happened to me. So that was the inspiration. That was Christchurch is where I grew up and where I went to university and had my formative years at school, and where I first heard this music that, as in the film, literally expanded my view of the world in something that's arguably quite a conservative city of Christchurch, the city of churches, as it's sometimes called, or the Garden City, sort of built to look a bit like a English town in a way. Probably to look like Christchurch in the UK, to be honest.
I've been to Christchurch a few times, and it's a very nice but very quiet sort of city. So, what happened in 1979, based on your own experiences, that must have been quite a revelation for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was, and it was this opening up of possibility. And I think what it was, and the music of the time was very, my argument is that all the best bands are formed in art schools anyway. But the music was tapping into a wider view of the world, a wider view of ideas. So it was tapping into literature and art. And so for us, for my friends, and myself, you would hear a song and you'd hear Howard Devoto from magazines singing about, and you realize, oh, he's singing about Dostoevsky, or Joseph Kay from Scotland singing, well, having a band called Joseph Kay. Oh, where's Joseph Kay come from? Oh, that's the protagonist from Kafka's The Trial. So all that led you into this world of literature and the world of art and the world of ideas, and an incredibly a watershed moment for a lot of people, because a lot of people like myself stayed in the world of ideas, for better or worse, Peter.
Fair enough. Tell me, how much was Ed Oxenbould's character, really good casting, I must say, based on your own experiences, and how much was sort of developed a little bit in the story?
It's pretty much there. I met Ed. Ed was in Bondi, well, was in Bondi, and I was in Bondi, and I met with him early on with the script, and I said he just seemed like the obvious person for it. I've sort of admired his work as a younger actor, and thought, because the film requires him to be in every scene. It is absolutely driven from him. So I needed someone, and it's tricky to cast someone. He's about 17 in the film. To cast that age can be tricky, for someone to actually hold up the whole film. So I knew he had the chops, and he read the script first, and he went, "Yeah, I just love this." And as it happened, his brother was living in London, as Angus's brother is in the film is living in London. He was in a band, although he was playing drums instead of playing the bass. So it all kind of sat with him really well. And then subsequently, as these things do, that took a while to get the film made. So he ended up taking up the bass before we started shooting, and all the bass that he plays on in the film is him playing, which was, I said to him, well, don't get too good. You can't be suddenly like Jaco Pastorius on the bass. You it has to be like you've just picked it up more or less. So yeah, he was careful not to get too good on the bass, but this is all about someone who picks up instruments for the first time, and this is what intrigues me about post-punk as opposed to punk rock, where often they were accomplished musicians or pub musicians who jumped on a bandwagon. Post-punk literally was a time when young people picked up instruments for the first time and experimented with the sounds that they could get out of them. And so that's really important. So when they write the songs, there's nothing worse than in a well, I wouldn't describe it as a musical, but it has a musical bent to it. But when they bring out the instruments, and suddenly they're incredibly accomplished musicians, and they haven't learnt, they haven't played before. I always find that a little bit disingenuous. So I was aware that you had to have a song, or the songs had to be at a level that someone, if they put their mind to it for 12 hours or something, could probably master.
Okay, okay. Oh, interesting to hear all that. Tell me about Martin Csokas, casting him as the father. Interesting character.
Yeah, well, he was just terrific in that role, and we talked about we wanted to avoid that the bad dad, which
Mm.
to me and Martin agreed has become something of a film cliche where you have the bad dad that's causing grief for everybody in the world. Not that bad dads don't do that, and don't get me wrong, there's too many bad dads in the world, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something where at the end of the day, unless the family is dysfunctional, at the end of the day, we have problems with our families, but everybody loves each other. At the end of hopefully in a family unit, that's what's going on. I would hope, and so I wanted to. I didn't want to shy away from that. So he's got problems of his own. Of course, his wife's left him temporarily. He's very world weary. He's trying to reinvent himself at the same time as Angus is trying to reinvent himself. But as a middle-aged, middle-class man, his idea of reinventing himself is buying the new generation lawnmower, which is a flymo that floats like a hovercraft. And then when that doesn't quite get him reinvented, he buys himself a sports car, of course, the middle-age crisis usual purchase.
Okay. Yeah, no, he's very good. And the rest of the cast, including Stella Bennett and the other young fans or friends of Ed's character and so on, because you've really cast it very well.
Yeah, Roxy Mohibi is the other one. We have Stella Bennett, who's the two women that Angus gets involved with. You have a sort of femme fatale character in the role of as Holly, played by Roxy Mohibi. It's interesting. The styling for her was absolutely based on Debbie Harry, and when I'd go into the wardrobe and go into makeup, there were pictures of Debbie Harry all over it. And when it opened in Rotterdam, opened at the Rotterdam Film Festival last year, who should be a guest of the festival but Debbie Harry? So that was a great thrill to meet her, and I
Ah,
was able to say, "You are the inspiration for this character in this film," which was really terrific. Yeah, the actors are without exception terrific, and it just shows that wealth of young actors coming through. I was so delighted when I first got got sent their audition tapes, and that was something that really knocked my socks off. Jane Marnie, who was our casting agent, did a great job in bringing me these great young people.
yes, absolutely. No, it works very well. Um, Tell me about getting production behind you because it's a New Zealand-based film and you got financing there. Was that a an easy process to get funding and to make the film?
Never an easy process, Peter. Never an easy process. But, it's funded. The principal financer is the New Zealand Film Commission.
Mm.
It's the same as you make a film here with Screen Australia. So they were in the end very supportive of the film and have continued to be. And so that it's a low budget film, of course, which makes it tricky. At one point, I think Martin, who'd just come over, he's now living in Italy, and he'd just made a film with who I could only imagine was a European tour, because he would say, was the last director I worked with, if this wasn't in place, he would say, we can't shoot for an hour, and he wouldn't know where to put the camera. Wasn't in the mood to know where to put the camera. And he said to me, "How are you shooting so quickly? You're shooting it faster than fast turnaround television." And I said, "Well, that's because we have to. There's no option with if you're making feature films in Australia or New Zealand, independent feature films, you've got to be totally on the ball. You know, it's so tight now that you really have to have done your homework and know exactly what you're doing as soon as you hit the set.
Yes, exactly. Well, well done on that. And I was intrigued at one stage the aspect ratio of the film does change, which is music related, and I thought that was a very clever bit of transition.
Yeah, it goes from 4:3. It opens up into widescreen, and that is the moment where Angus hears this music that is going to change his life. And I thought, when I was writing the script, I went, well, how do you show that? Script writing is all about how do you show internal thought processes, how do you externalize them? That's what screenplays do. That's the challenge of a screenplay. So, I came up with that idea. Okay, we'll shift the ratio. So, anybody who looks at it and go, oh, we're going to be sitting through 4:3, can be rest assured we're going to get to widescreen about 12 minutes into the film.
Yes. No, I like that. That was quite evocative. Tell me about locations that you used, because I mean I'm reasonably familiar with Christchurch, but I gather finding places and so on would have not been that easy.
Well, depending on when your visit was, Peter, you may not be so familiar because
Yeah.
after after the quakes,
Yep.
I would go back there and get totally lost because all the landmarks were gone. So
Yes.
that was a very uncanny, or since you've got German flags behind you, unheimlich. This idea that you'd end up in Christchurch, not be able to work your way around. So that was a challenge. Absolutely, there are still gaps in the cityscape that still haven't been filled up. But like most films, we ended up on the iconic landmarks that we used, which in this case were the Bridge of Remembrance, and of course the Bridge of Remembrance opening shot. You wouldn't, if you didn't know the city, you wouldn't know it's the Bridge of Remembrance, but it certainly has the Arcadian look to it. That of course thematically is a Bridge of Remembrance. We're remembering these people, and at the end of the film, you get a remembrance of people who have passed, who were influential, either absolutely involved in the film or characters in the film, or they were inspirations for the film. So we used iconic places. There was actually one building that was an old hotel called Noah's Hotel, which is still up and still ruined by the quakes, but hasn't been pulled down, but is not. And so that's been all boarded up for years since the quakes. I think what they're 12 years ago or something.
Yeah.
But we were able to bring that back to life with the magic of CGI. We
Mm.
did the post production up at Peter Jackson's place at Park Road Post in Wellington. So that was a nice thing to bring back this great concave modernist building that was always a landmark for us.
Yeah.
To bring that back to life was a nice thing to be able to do.
Yes. No, well done on that. It does look good, and CGI can be so useful at times.
Mhm. Exactly.
And tell me about the music itself, because you've put in some really interesting music and so on. How did you get all that?
Yeah, well, I've even put my own music. My one concession to anachronism is that I put in some of my own music. My band YFC, who are of the time, but we probably didn't start until 1981, and the film set in 1979. So that's a 2-year anachronism. But everything is absolutely on the money for 1979 music. And so that was. I'm happy to say that when I wrote it, the music that I wrote, I was able to get the rights for, because these are not hugely popular songs. These are alternative independent songs that came out at the time. Always surprised how few people actually know them, because as far as we were concerned at that time, Joy Division, Love Will Tear Us Apart went to number one on the music charts in New Zealand, which I don't think it went anywhere near number one in any other charts anywhere else in the world. So we had a kind of slightly distorted view of what was popular music. It was always it was a shock when I left New Zealand, the shores of New Zealand, to find out, oh, not everybody thinks the Fall are, one of the great bands, or have even heard of the Fall. So that was interesting. We're in our bubble of post-punk music, which, yeah, still on the fringes. So that was nice to play it. But it has that energy. The music has the energy which I wanted, and that energy, I think, thinking about it, comes from bass, guitar, drums, and not so much the keyboard. Even though keyboard is part of post-punk, this was the time where you just have the minimal amount you could have to make a racket, and you plug in, and what the immediacy of that is still incredibly exciting. And young people coming to watch the film get very excited about it, particularly film students. I must say they kind of apoplectic to come and see me afterwards. Go, oh, I want to make a film like that, because it has the energy that they want to tap into. My 18-year-old son is absolutely into playing guitar and in being in a band, and all things vinyl, all things pre-digital, which of course is what this film taps into, this idea of the pre-digital world, where not everything was pre-packaged and not everything was immediate. You had to wait 3 months to get any news from the other side of the world about anything new. And of course, that there's an advantage in that, because it gives you room to be creative. And so you're not just following the coattails of what's particularly in fashion at any given point in the world.
Yes, no, again, well done on that. It does have a good look and feel to it. I noticed you got an Augie nomination, Writers Guild nomination for Head South. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, good. It's great that a New Zealand film can be nominated. I am, of
Mm.
course, I'm based in I'm an Australian writer, so that was a very nice to be in that company.
Yes, and of course I remember well your film's Tender Hook, and you've mentioned Lone Wolf when we spoke at that time, and so I'm always intrigued about how you decide what you're going to make a film about.
Yes, yes. Well, the wisdom of what you write, of course, is anyone who's done a creative writing course will be told, number one rule, write about what you know. My advice, and I teach screenwriting at Afters, my advice is write about what you know in terms of screenwriting, write about what you know, but expand on it, because the screen demands a slightly bigger stories than what you can arguably get away with in a novel. So I've ignored my own advice for years now and been writing about stuff that I had to find out about. It's not like I don't know, but I had to find out about. I had to do a lot of research to find out about. Whereas this was at my doorstep. This is my life, so I
Mm.
finally came back to it. And I think the time that it took has been quite useful in terms of the dynamic of, particularly of the central relationship between the father and son. If I'd written it earlier, it would have all been from the point of view of Angus, the 17-year-old boy, agreeing with his view of the world. When I ended up writing it, of course, I was older than the dad. So suddenly I'm going, the dad, Gordon, he has some points here. You should not be going out to see a band on a school night. You shouldn't be doing that. So that's nice for that dynamic. It's not just a one way, and once again, it deflates the idea of the bad dad. No, it's someone who's actually been quite reasonable. He may be putting his foot down at certain times, but he's
Mm.
he's trying to understand his son quite a bit of the time.
Yes, yes. And it's interesting to note the absent mother, uh, which is an interesting story device in itself.
Yes, so she's floating there as she may not she's certainly there. Her presence is felt with everything around her, because there's a Temuka pottery. There's all this stuff. It's very obvious that it's her house, and she has decorated this house, and they're sitting in it. And at one point, there's actually an empty seat for her at the dinner table, with a plate even. So her her ghost, and of course there's references to ghosts throughout the film, but she is kind of like a haunting figure for them both. Uh, and forcing her absence, of course, forces them to come together
Mm.
in a way that you get a sense that they would just be ships in the night. Normally, they'd be passing each other by, and the mother would be the conduit, as often happens in families. The mother is a conduit somehow between um, fathers and teenage sons.
Yes, yes. No, again, I found a really good idea or issue in terms of the film story development and the father-son relationship and so on. So you've mentioned Rotterdam. The film has had some acclaim in overseas territories by the looks of it.
Yeah, it has. It opened Rotterdam last year. Can say to a 1,500 seater, got a long-standing ovation to it, which was a wonderful experience. But also brought home to me the idea that it's not, you don't have to know about post-punk music. You don't have to know about Christchurch. There is a universal story there, particularly the coming of age story, and this the relationship once again between the father and the son is something
Mm.
that people really respond to, and the music's really a vehicle. It could well be someone interested in rock climbing, perhaps, but it is about getting into immersing yourself into a world that you previously haven't been part of and wanting to be part of that world. So one of the themes, of course, is the temptation to be attracted by the magnetic rather than the true is a theme that runs through that. And of course, that's the lesson that Angus has to learn to some extent throughout the film. Interesting when at the end of Rotterdam, a woman came up afterwards and says, "I just want to know one thing. Did you end up marrying Kirsten?" And Kirsten, of course, is the character that Angus should be with.
Yeah.
And I had to say, no, I was still attracted to the magnetic. I was still attracted to the Holly characters. So you have these two women who represent the true and the magnetic, and Angus being sort of pulled between the two of them in a way.
Yes. Oh, how interesting to hear that and to have that question asked of you. So that's that is so good. So, Jonathan, what's next for you?
Well, I have a series actually that I'm looking at getting up called Minotaur, which is World War II Odyssey set on the Greek island of Crete. And so I'm really interested. It's a big, exciting project, but I'm looking at it from the point of view of Australians, Maori, Pākehā, Greek, British, and German points of view, which is it's the great thing about a series as opposed to a screenplay. Of course, screenplays are always one protagonist on a journey. This idea of opening up that world fascinates me, and how that might work in terms of different points of view. And so that's something that's very ambitious, but I'm hoping to get up and probably shooting Crete in New Zealand, believe it or not. There's a place called Alexandria in the South Island of Crete. I've been down there on locations, and it's it looks exactly like Crete. So it might be able to be doing that all on this side of the world, which is a very exciting option.
Sounds like a really interesting project. Hopefully, it will get going very soon and look forward to seeing it and talking to you about it later on.
I hope so. I look forward to speaking to you about it. That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. We've been speaking to Jonathan Ogilvie, who is the writer-director of Head South, now screening in Australian cinemas. Jonathan, as always, pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Lovely to be here.
All the best. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.